Hi everyone, welcome to my review of John Glen's A View to a Kill from 1985. So yes, we are back once again to talk about James Bond, and it's quite soon once again after my previous Bond review, re-review of course. But yes, I just wanted to kind of talk about this film again. I guess when this is uploaded, it will be around about kind of 5 or 6 days since my Octopussy review, so almost a week, which is kind of as I've been saying, the kind of the aim, at least, to kind of talk about Bond every week or so. But yes, once again, to talk about Bond, the 14th in the franchise, and yes, the 7th, significantly, of course, the 7th and final Roger Moore Bond appearance. So yes, his final outing, of course, and yes, in that sense, currently at least, the longest running Bond, kind of portrayal, of course, by a particular actor. So very, very interesting, of course. A very divisive film. We must say now, spoilers alert for this discussion, of course. If you haven't seen this film, watch it first, preferably at least, and then, of course, come back to this review. And yeah, from there we can kind of discuss, with respect, of course, discuss this film, and I look forward to that, of course, as always, to talk about Bond. And yes, leave your thoughts, of course, if you want, in the comments. Once we've watched this film, of course, there will be spoilers about different kind of plot points and stuff. So yes, with that said, as always, yes, let's dig into this. Very, very interesting. I find it very, very interesting, this film. A real unique Bond film, and yes, kind of a unique experience that I've had with the film. But yes, of course, we must say once again, the final appearance, of Roger Moore, and that is very, very sad. I find it particularly very, very sad. Of course, 7 films, and it really hit me once again. Of course, the fact that I've got no more on, at least this kind of particular kind of adventure of the franchise once again. No more Roger Moore's left. I find that very sad. It's always sad, of course, to transition to the different Bonds, and of course exciting to see a different take. As I've said before, I love the Bond actors. They've all had their kind of at least one, I guess, film to kind of shine in that sense and show their greatness. I really believe that. And yes, of course, Roger Moore in 7 films. This has kind of taken me a number of months to kind of course, kind of go through these ones in particular. So very, very kind of sad, actually, to kind of leave it in itself, and also, of course, the fact that Roger Moore is no longer with us, and what a wonderful, wonderful individual he was. And we have these 7 films, of course, to kind of enjoy. And yes, of course, once again, I went through this with the second part now of the set, behind me, of course. And yes, A View to a Kill, a very divisive film. At times, this is quite, well, we must say, yes, hated at times, and a lot of people do not like this film. It's very, overall, it's not popular, although there's some that do kind of defend the film, and of course, yeah, there's a few people out there that do really love the film. And yes, I think it's always great to see the different opinions, of course, of the Bond franchise as a whole, and see everyone's rankings. And I must say, my previous review, I must say as well, I was not in the best of moods on that particular day. Kind of a significant event happened, and I remember, it's a few years ago, of course, now, but I remember distinctly thinking maybe I shouldn't watch this film today, maybe wait a day or two, and I just kind of wanted to watch the film regardless, and I put it on, and yeah, of course, I responded in a way. I said it was a very disappointing film, and in that review, and yes, I kind of thought, it's very disappointing, and it's just not impressive. I thought, although I did enjoy a few things, and mainly, of course, the villain of Christopher Walken, portraying Max Zorin, and Zorin is the main villain, of course, of the film, and I think I did enjoy that, of course. And I've seen this film a few times as a kid, but it's not one of my more watched films of the franchise, perhaps. Not a film I've seen too many times, really, in that sense. So yes, this film is always kind of growing on me the more I watch it. And this time round, actually, I had a really nice experience with it, and just enjoyed the kind of the campiness of it once again, and just actually, it's a real big kind of increase actually, in terms of what score I'll give this film from last time round. But my other reviews, of course, I think a lot of them have changed actually. My scores of these films, going up, of course. So yeah, so much so that I will give this a positive score actually, and I do kind of I do like this film, and I know not a lot of people do respond to this too well, and I can understand. Of course, it's not it's not it's not one of my favourites or anything like that. Bond films, and I think it has quite a few flaws. Just a personal kind of kind of observation of the film, and from my experience, I do have issues with the film. I don't consider this anything kind of great or premium Bond in that sense. Although there's a couple of things I do love about the film, especially, and I'll get to them. But yeah, I think it's actually it is a good film in many regards, and I think overall, I think again, this kind of completes the whole kind of seven really, in the sense that I do now, I will now give a positive score to every single of the seven Bond films, containing Roger Moore. I enjoy them all. I like them all, and I have my own personal ranking of them films I do love, especially Despite Love Me, etc. But this film, once again, I don't dislike it. This time around, I do respond to well to the film, and I do like it. I think it's quite a decent Bond actually, and I'd say a lot of the film is very enjoyable. I think mainly the middle portion, around the 50 or 55 minutes to around the hour and 20 or hour and 25 mark is kind of when the film is at its worst, in my opinion. It's just a bit flat for my liking. I don't really think there's as much enjoyment as there had been, in the campiness, in the kind of interactions. It's priceless to see Christopher Walken, as a villain in a Bond film. And actually, one of my flaws is that he should have been a bit more, a lot more, and because when he's on screen, you've got Roger Moore and Christopher Walken facing off. It really is priceless, in my opinion. I really, when he's there, in different moments, I think Christopher Walken, I really love his portrayal of Max Zorin, and I think Zorin's plan, it is maybe not one of the more interesting kind of plots, and quite a few of the Bond films are very similar in their plots, as I've said, and not, on paper that compelling, but it's about how, of course, it's intertwined with the characters, etc. The style and the way it's kind of told. But this one in particular is not that compelling, but it's all about how Christopher Walken, his plans are kind of portrayed in the film in the sense of him, yes, basically the way he kind of goes about this, and the kind of, I think the really kind of childlike basicness actually of the kind of the villains in this film is actually what makes it really enjoyable in places. Mayday, played by Grace Jones. This is so enjoyable. I think the villains of this film, and Roger Moore, and the kind of the relaxing feel at times it has, connected to the score as well. The wonderful, actually, John Barry score, and this is the kind of the main things I really like about the film. The reason why I do give this a positive score. I think Grace Jones, she does go maybe too far at times in the film, but actually overall I really enjoyed this character of Mayday. Kind of a villain alongside Christopher Walken. She's kind of the bodyguard, if you will, over glorified, very kind of stylized character, but I think she's really good in the film. She's just very entertaining. It would have been interesting to kind of see, as I say, more of these villains in the film. I think Christopher Walken, when he's there, as I say, is very enjoyable in the film. And actually, I would go as far to say, that he's one of the better Bond villains, in terms of enjoyment. I think there's a couple of Roger Moore Bond films where the villain, I would take over this, but this is actually, I think, better, for example, than even Christopher Lee in The Man with the Golden Gun. I think in terms of the enjoyment and actually the way the villain is used in the film, just in terms of entertainment value, I think actually, I would take this, and I would take this over Moonraker as well. And I a few of these, you know, Live and Let Die as well. I really enjoy Christopher Walken and the team up, you know, these two characters, and the clothing, you know, the colours, it all really stands out to me, and it's something that, you know, it's very appealing, you know, and just kind of, it's just very, very on the nose, yes, but, you know, in that sense, yeah, it's just very enjoyable, simplistic kind of way in which the villains, you know, very over the top, the way they're kind of portrayed in the film, really, 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 you know, works here actually. And Roger Moore, again, is good in the film. You know, he's good in all of these films, and I think it's very, very interesting. Of course, you know, there's a lot of times where you don't actually see Roger Moore, because of course the stunt doubles and stuff, you know, in the film. I think one of the flaws is the way, you know, they could have, I believe, made it a bit more, you know, try to conceal this a bit more. You know, a lot of you know, moments where you see very obviously, you know, the stunt doubles, and you know, it's just a little slight there as well. It's you know, you know, sometimes it doesn't matter too much. You know, Moonraker is quite notorious for the open, of course, the Jaws stunt double there. I mean, it's very obvious, but you know, and some of the films are doesn't really matter too much. But in this film, you know, it's very much. You know, at times scene after scene, you know, where it just could have been, you know, maybe they should have hidden this a bit more, you know, concealed it, you know, so yes, it didn't take me out as much, but it's kind of funny as well, you know, I must admit there's some laughs in there, but yes, I think Roger Moore, you know, his performance is definitely very enjoyable, once again, you know, there's a real charm to him, you know, in these films, and I personally think he's best in The Spy Who Loved Me, but you know, never a bad performance here, never a kind of a weak performance. You know, he was just a very charming, funny, and you know, innocent Bond. Not a threatening Bond, really overall. But it's more of a, this direction was more, yeah, it's just light-hearted. You know, humorous, of course, in a particular way, because every Bond is in some way really, you know, humorous. But yes, very charming, and just very pleasing to watch. Very pleasant, and yes, it's no exception here. I think he's very good in the film, and yes, just, you know, the plot isn't the best, it isn't the most engaging in the way it's done, but the characters and the kind of campy nature of the film is very over the top. I wouldn't say the most over the top and kind of outlandish Bond of the Roger Moores. I think, you know, really Octopussy could be more so there, and you know, consistently, and yeah, you could say Moonraker at times, and yeah, but you know, this film, you know, it is definitely, of course, over the top, outlandish, and very much bizarre at times. But that's kind of the fun of it. You know, just kind of sit back and, you know, I really this time around had a really good time with this one. You know, I think it's an okay film actually. It's not a bad film, and yeah, I think it's got its really really impressive moments actually. You know, the score to this film is wonderful. John Barry is one of my 5 favourite composers, and you know, my favourite score from him is actually not a Bond film, but you know, many of these Bond films that he scored, of course, Goldfinger, for example, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, you know, these films, they are all some of my favourite film scores. You know, he was an absolute legend, and what he brought to this franchise is one of the very, very key elements that makes it what it is, and you know, a lot of the scores are very lacking when they're not, you know, John Barry, but you know, he very much very soon after this film he would of course depart, but yes, his score here is very, very nice, very wonderful at times, and of course Duran Duran, you know, performing the theme song. It's not exactly, you know, a Bond-esque theme, you know, it's very different, of course, and very much kind of just a kind of a song, you know, that's just been used, I guess, in a Bond film. It's not really got any Bond feeling in it, and it's not really, yeah, it's just very strange that this is a Bond theme. Having said that, yeah, this has definitely grown on me, and I think the way it's kind of used in the titles and the way it kind of transitions there, I really like this actually. I think actually it's definitely grown on me, and yeah, not one of the worst Bond themes, certainly not by any standards for me personally, and yeah, again, it's not my kind of top 10 Bond themes personally, but because of course, you know, there's been many great legendary Bond themes, and I think yes, this is very good actually, you know, for what it's kind of trying to be, and yes, the titles themselves, I think bizarre, you know, kind of nice and colourful, and yes, scary actually as well. You know, it's very, very strange. You know, it kind of it's quite scary. You know, and shocking perhaps. You know, kind of titles and its visuals, very strange. And you know, I think yeah, this is one of the ones as a kid that I was a bit kind of disturbed by perhaps. You know, it's a very really quite a stylized perhaps, you know, title sequence, and I think the way, you know, the hair is kind of coloured there, and the kind of the whole kind of the visual you know, of this title sequence is quite shocking actually, and quite scary, I must say that. But yes, of course, the opening sequence is again very criticised. I actually really enjoy this kind of this whole kind of action sequence here. You know, the skiing scene there, and of course yes, that moment, of course, transitioning Roger Moore, of course, going onto the kind of snowboarding bit there, and of course you've got the Beach Boys, you know, California Girls, and yes, you know, my thoughts on that. I don't think it's one of the worst Bond moments, that's for sure. Actually, I think it's quite a kind of enjoyable moment, and you know, the Beach Boys, I love their music, and you know, it doesn't fit. You know, I don't think that this song fits the kind of the scene there, perhaps, or really a Bond film, you know, in many regards. But you know, I think at the same time, you know, I love the song, I love their songs, of course, and yeah, it's just a very odd moment. But you know, I think to call it one of the very worst Bond moments, you know, I definitely don't think that. You know, I think it's quite enjoyable, and I think the action overall in this, you know, it really kind of surprised me once again. Actually, you know, it's quite a good film in its action scenes. There are a few that are definitely lacking as we go on in the film. You know, quite flat at times. But speaking on this opening sequence, you know, very enjoyable actually. And yes, of course, Roger Moore. You know, the charm again. Once you know, this kind of sequence. You know, the dialogue there, and yes, just a kind of an enjoyable, you know, and very nicely shot kind of opening sequence there. So there's of course the first act is very breezy, of course, and very much low key. It's not a film that really you know, takes itself seriously much at all. And you know, again, I can understand if some, you know, just aren't invested in this film, and you know, don't really get behind this. You know, it's not a film like you know, for example, From Russia with Love, which really, you know, I think personally, you know, really gets you wrapped up straight away in the plot, the characters. You know, I think it's more a face value film, more of a kind of a, you know, a film, yeah, played for laughs, of course, very tongue in cheek. You know, but yes, I can understand it's not for everyone, this film, but I just kind of enjoy this film for the kind of, yes, the kind of campy nature, for the locations, the music, of course. The way the film is shot, it definitely isn't one of the best Bond films, I think, but in that regard, but very nice at the same time. And of course, Roger Moore, Grace Jones, and Christopher Walken, you know, are very good in the film. And Christopher Walken, you know, when he's kind of got his moments in there, is you know, absolutely hilarious. And yes, of course, Tanya Roberts playing Stacey Sutton as the main Bond girl, of course, of the film, and she is. You know, she's enjoyable, I guess. Not one of my favourite Bond girls, really, but yeah, she's fine in the film, and I like the kind of relationship between you know, this Bond girl, of course, and you know, Bond himself. You know, it's nice, it's kind of pleasing, and you know, it's kind of funny at times, but nothing special. It's nothing too kind of involving at all, and you know, one of the kind of portions, you know, of the middle of the film. Mainly centering on that kind of relationship there, I think could have been better. You know, it's definitely you know, just not that, nothing I can really get behind. And there's a couple of moments that, you know, in that kind of in the middle of the film really, which are kind of flat for my liking personally. But yes, you know, it does pick up again in the kind of final act. And yes, the whole kind of plan, you know, of our main villain, of course, Maxwell, is to kind of dominate, you know, the microchip market, of course. You know, his eventual kind of, you know, the final plan here is to kind of destroy Silicon Valley, and yes, his competitors in that sense. Of course, you do get the kind of dispatching of different, you know, competitors as well, before the kind of final, you know, all out, in my opinion, you know, can be final act. You know, the whole kind of scene where, you know, that individual falls there, you know, into the sky. You know, that's very hilarious as well. Very funny moment, and Christopher Walken really plays this well. This villain, you know, really just so good in how you know, over the top it is, and you know, theatrical. You know, Christopher Walken, he's given some of the very best performances that I've seen. You know, a real legend in my eyes, and I think this is just one of these performances where he's really, you know, just having fun with it, and you know, really just, yes, you know, the theatricality of this kind of performance is, you know, what makes it so enjoyable, and yes, just highly entertaining there, and the team up, of course, of him and Mayday throughout the film, but then the really human, actually, you know, kind of very interesting character turn of Mayday right in the final act there, where she kind of gets tries to, well, get revenge on Zoran, of course, because she felt kind of betrayed by him. You know, it's kind of these little touches here, actually, these little subtle moments that actually make it, you know, surprisingly, you know, kind of human as well. At the same time, it's very theatrical. It's very much on the nose, very much a very basic film in many regards, in my opinion. But it has got these little moments that actually, you know, quite surprising. And I think her, you know, that kind of surprise there, that kind of turn, really makes sense. And actually, she's a very good character, in my opinion, Mayday. You know, it's just my opinion. I think, you know, there is definitely some compelling, you know, kind of aspects about her character outside of the whole kind of just, you know, surface level enjoyment of the kind of again, the over the top nature of this character, and her fighting skills as well. You know, real physical performance by Grace Jones, and I really enjoyed her. And you know, I think she's very as well in real life, actually. You know, very interesting, very entertaining, in my opinion. I really do. I'm definitely a fan. You know, and yes, you know, she really brings this kind of energy as well to the role, and I think very commendable. Roger Moore, you know, really works, you know, against these performances as well, and I think, yes, you know, one of the things about this film is the kind of the side characters, of course, the recurring characters. You know, again, they could have had more screen time, perhaps. It's kind of, you know, I missed the kind of real full-on hands-on approach of Q in this film. That he was, of course, Octopussy. You know, he had a real big role in the film. You know, in terms of the plot, the action scenes as well, and he's very much, you know, some of these characters are sidelined a bit more. You know, for example, in this film, Moneypenny, of course, is the final. This film is the final Lois Maxwell appearance, you know, and portrayal of Moneypenny. What a shame. So this is, you know, this is a real significant, you know, kind of film for many reasons. Of course, that being one, and of course Roger Moore's final as well outing. They went out together, and of course in real life they were big, you know, big friends, good friends. Of course, they knew each other going way back. Of course, that's very interesting there as well, and another kind of you know, element of sadness to this whole project, if you will. But yes, you know, I think it's very interesting scenes. You know, at the races, you know, I'm not a big fan of the kind of some of them parts there, for example, with some of these characters. But you know, having said that, again, you know, it's definitely. No, I don't think this film, you know, has a kind of a standout moment really that is, you know, kind of as annoying, for example, as the Man with the Golden Gun. You know, that kind of the action scene there with Sheriff Pepper. That's a moment that I really think is one of the low points, really. You know, just in my opinion, it just doesn't work. I think one of the things is, you know, these films, you know, Octopussy, View to a Kill, Moonraker as well, they kind of establish more of a campy tone, more of a silly tone. I think it works when you've got these kind of outlandish moments. It works more because it's not, you know, taken as seriously, and it knows what it is more than, for example, a film like The Man with the Golden Gun. And I do like that film as well. I like all of these. As I say, Roger Moore Bonds, but yes, this film, you know, it has, you know, sluggish moments, I feel, especially in the middle. You know, I'm not a big fan of some of the middle of the film, but really consistently, it's you know, it's kind of in some way an enjoyable experience. I don't think this film's bad. It's not an awful film, you know, like some would suggest. You know, just in my opinion, everyone will react differently, and of course, I understand it's not for everyone. This film, you know, it certainly isn't. It's not, you know, for everyone. Not everyone's gonna like every Bond film. I don't, of course. I don't like. Well, I've already mentioned one, and we'll get to a couple more, which you know, I probably dislike even more from that film. But you know, and there's one in particular which really we'll get to that. We'll definitely get to that. And, you know, really another one actually as well, which for different reasons it's kind of more irritating to me. But yes, this film is a film that I like. Of course, I like all of these 7 Roger Moore Bonds, and I think this is definitely definitely a film that's, you know, again, it's kind of how maybe if you're in a particular mindset, you'll respond differently to this film. You know, it depends again if you can get behind this tone and realise it's not a film that takes itself seriously. It's not a film that you know is kind of an emotional bond in its narrative arc, perhaps, like some. But you know, I think for what this film is, I think it's very enjoyable at times, and overall an enjoyable film. It's a decent Bond. I think it's definitely not the worst Bond by any standards, and I think Roger Moore gives a very good performance once again. And yes, very very sad. This is his final outing, but he really puts in another charming and elegant, graceful performance. Once again, I think the action scenes, you know, it's a shame that you know, you can see the stunt double quite a lot, but you know, that's just a little slight there as well. And of course, some of the action in the middle of the film, the kind of chase scenes at night, perhaps, you know, in the fire truck. You know, while I did enjoy this, you know, at times, you know, I think that could have been better. But luckily, the final kind of set pieces are very very commendable, and I think, yes, you know, that turn, you know, with Grace Jones, of course, is really really interesting. You know, it really surprises me every time, this one, with that kind of character. Actually, you know, she's a very good character, actually, and yes, we have to talk about that final moment, of course, the Golden Gate Bridge. Atop that, you know, that is, you know, one of the strangest moments, you know, in all of cinema, is the kind of the falling, you know, the kind of yes, the fall there by Christopher Walken's character of Max Zorin. You know, it's really really funny to see. You know, I think in this film it's very you know, it's very interesting. You know, Christopher Walken, you know, he plays this really really well, and it's kind of the character and the performance becomes more mad, of course, with power. At the same time, the madness of this theatricality, you know, theatrical performance, you know, really just builds and builds as the film goes on, until that final moment. It's just insane, really really insane, and so enjoyable, really, in many regards. I think the whole kind of way in which he falls and he's laughing, you know, hysterically, you know, maddening laugh by Christopher Walken is legendary, you know, in many regards. Really, really full on kind of moment there. I really, really liked, and you know, just the expressions. Yeah, it takes a real talented actor to pull this off, and for it not to be, you know, too far, even though it kind of is, you know. And it's really, really funny to see, you know, that kind of fall there. It's just insane, but yeah, quite epic at the same time. Quite commendable there. The direction, you know, I think is solid. It's definitely lacking in places. John Glen, it's not his, you know, his best film in my opinion. Directed Bond, but that's just for me. And yes, at the same time, it moves along quite nicely. It does kind of stumble, you know, at times. I think there's a bit too much one-liners, of course, in this film. I think while it is kind of funny, maybe you could say it's you know, quite aware of itself, you know, in the way of the franchise. It is still a bit too much, regardless. And I do think there's a couple of performances, you know, background characters perhaps, that are kind of forgettable, and definitely some flat moments throughout the film. And really, other than that, you know, it's got its bizarre moments, and it's not anything you know, too stand out really, overall, but it's an okay film. You know, it's definitely not under par. You know, I don't believe that, and I do think it's you know, pretty decent Bond, and I do enjoy this one, you know, quite a bit. You know, I don't love this film, but I do really like at least a few elements, and I love, of course, the score, and yeah, Christopher Walken, of course, portraying of course, Max Zorin, and yes, I think the locations, you know, of course, you know, seeing Christopher Walken's first kind of true appearance there, them locations there are really beautiful, and I love the kind of breezy feel it has at times as well there. But yeah, nothing special with this film. It's an overall Bond film, you know, it's an action film, adventure, you know, or romance as well. You know, there's a few things that are definitely lacking, and I think it's, you know, it's an average film in terms of quality, but I think the enjoyment is definitely, you know, perhaps a bit more than that. You know, it's definitely a film that I do enjoy quite a bit, you know, like Moonraker as well. I think actually it's very much on the level of Moonraker, you know, an okay film, you know, standard film, but one that I do enjoy quite a bit, you know, in terms of, you know, my personal enjoyment of the film. And again, two films that have surprised me, you know, have grown on me, of course, as well. And yes, I think I do like all these 7 Roger Moore Bonds, and I think this one, you know, gets a lot of criticism. You know, I think I can understand, you know, it's not for everyone, but yes, you know, it's just, for me, it's a film, you know, when in the right mindset, one can definitely enjoy, perhaps. And yeah, if you've not seen this film before, I recommend it, of course. And if you haven't seen this film too many times, perhaps a rewatch would be something I would recommend personally. Maybe if you want, and yeah, because speaking on my experience, you know, I've rewatched it once again. I do like it a lot more, you know, when in a different mindset, of course. And as I've said, you know, I wasn't in a great mood when I watched it February 2018, you know, thinking of it there. And yes, I wasn't maybe in the mood to kind of watch a film like this. I should have waited, but now, when watching it, you know, in a particular mood, in a silly mood perhaps, in a mood to kind of escape to a kind of innocence of a, you know, kind of a film that's, yeah, very much a campy film, one that is very childlike, of course, in its characterization, in its plot, in its kind of tone, and in its visuals at times as well. You know, even the opening titles. But yes, I think when in that mindset, I did really enjoy moments of this. I did overall, despite the kind of flat moments, sequences, and definitely nothing to stand out in some of the characters, in the plot, in the direction. You know, I did enjoy it. I did enjoy this film, and I would recommend it. You know, to people that like you know, action films, comedies, perhaps it's very funny at times, intentionally as well as you know, maybe not so much. But yes, this film, A View to a Kill, is actually more interesting and more commendable than I ever thought. You know, it's definitely nothing great. You know, it's definitely not for me personally a great film or anything like that. And it's definitely one of the middle Bonds in that sense. You know, where I would rank it roughly, but it's moved up on my ranking, and I think I did enjoy it. You know, I definitely had a good time with this film, and yes, at the same time, you know, it's very sad to see Roger Moore, you know, leave the franchise. So in that sense, I will have a break between this and, of course, The Living Daylights. You know, of course, to kind of, you know, let it mellow and you know, prepare myself for a kind of gradual transition to a different kind of phase of Bond. And this film itself, a decent film. You know, it's an okay film and nothing bad. You know, definitely a film that I did enjoy quite a bit, more than I thought it would. You know, and definitely more than I ever have. So yes, A View to a Kill is definitely for me an entertaining Bond film. Yes, overall, you know, I think this film is okay. You know, it's definitely a positive score that I'll give it this time around. I do think this is kind of very much, you know, close to another Bond film, you know, of the Roger Moores. I think that is Moonraker. You know, I think they're very similar at times in the structure and stuff, you know, in that sense. And I think, yes, in terms of the quality and the preference, who knows, you know, it's very much a balance there. I think they're definitely very close, you know, in that sense. So, you know, there's things I prefer about Moonraker, one being Jaws, you know, that character, of course, you know, transitioning from The Spy Who Loved Me, you know, and that's very rarely happened in that sense. And I do really enjoy Jaws in that film. I think that's something that this film doesn't have. You know, I think the action overall in that film, Moonraker, and the visuals are probably more pleasing and you know, funny. You know, in different moments as well with Jaws, and I think, you know, more in the way of tension, perhaps. And yes, this film does have some flat moments, mainly in the middle, you know, and stuff. And you know, I can kind of I can take things from both that I would kind of, you know, cross-reference perhaps. You know, I think the score, you know, to this film is very, very nice as well, and I think Moonraker as well, really, really nice score. You know, so I think in terms of quality, they are the same in that sense. In terms of the score, in that sense, I'll give this the same score that I gave very recently, of course, in my recent review of Moonraker, and that is a 63%. That's my final rating for the film. The preference, you know, very close, and actually, yes. So, you know, in this sense, the rating I give this film is mainly for what I think personally. Of course, of the actual, quality of this film, the script, etc., and the direction, perhaps, in that sense. But yes, the enjoyment is definitely higher, quite a bit. Same can be said for Moonraker. But yes, I think definitely another enjoyable film. I like all of the kind of Roger Moore films, the Bonds, of course, the Seven, the complete Seven, and yes, I think this film has grown on me. As I say, it's definitely one that benefits from being in the right mindset, and I just in general appreciate this film more in different things. I think for example, Mayday has grown on me. I think there's some definitely some subtle and human moments in that character. I think some depth. So yeah, very interesting film. A fun film overall. It has its moments that aren't so fun. In the middle, and I think for example, Mayday and of course Maxwell could have been in the film even more, and then it would have been even more enjoyable. And there's some moments that I don't care for too much. The races perhaps and stuff, but overall, this is not a bad film in my opinion, and certainly not. Once again, I see this getting a lot more. It's made out to be one of the kind of worst films or something, by some professional critics, and I think that's maybe, that's interesting. I don't think this film deserves, kind of that kind of talk there. I think it's definitely not. There's so many other films, as I say, quite often with the Bond films that get more kind of more of a pass because it's kind of a big franchise, in that sense. A lot of the films do get kind of, for being maybe outlandish, and more just a different take on Bond. Not a bland film like maybe we'll get to one of them in the franchise, but simply a film that takes itself not too seriously and is more wacky perhaps, and more simplistic, more silly in that sense. I think gets more criticism in them categories, for particular reasons that I think is maybe a shame to see. But at the end of the day, of course, it's all preference, and I personally like this film. What do you think? Do you like this film? How would you rank it, perhaps? Or leave that for the future ranking once again that I'll be doing once, of course, No Time to Die is out, and that will likely be the full 25 official Bond films. Although we'll talk about the other the other two main unofficial Bonds. I won't include them in the ranking. I don't think I can do that in that sense. I don't think I want to do that. But yes, the official 25. Maybe wait to the ranking to tell me, perhaps, or just give a rough idea now. Whatever you want to do, of course, it's always down to you, and it'd be just great to hear your thoughts, regardless, on this film. So, a special film in itself, in the sense that it's a farewell to two very, very significant players in this franchise, Lois Maxwell, and of course Roger Moore. Yes, indeed, and very, very sad. But yes, 7 films. What a legend. And again, I did say, I think this is probably going to be the case for the highest number of Bond films for a particular actor, maybe ever in the franchise's history, at least. I don't know if that would be topped. I can't see it. I didn't even think Daniel Craig would actually be in 5. It will be, of course. I think so. Yeah, I think 7. Who knows? Maybe leave your thoughts on that. Who knows? I don't think so. I think Roger Moore will remain, in that sense, the longest running kind of actor to portray, to perform this character of Bond. So yes, very, very significant, of course. And yes, I think once again, it's a film that's grown on me, and it's a film that I do like personally. Just my opinion, and yes. Tell me your thoughts, of course. What do you think of the film? And yes, let's talk everything cinema, of course, as always. And yeah, always grateful to everyone watching the videos, and of course commenting, in particular on this Bond series that I've been doing. And it's been great to hear your thoughts once again. People that didn't, I didn't hear, their particular thoughts before, my previous going through this set of wonderful films. So yes. Bond, all things Bond, and yes, just leave your thoughts if you want, and as always, take care, and thanks for watching.